Hello, Leslie, and the attendees of 2013 USC Body Computing Conference. I hope you're all enjoying this year's conference. I'm sorry I could not make it out to this exciting event, but I would like to take this opportunity via video to answer some of Leslie's questions in regards to FDA's perspective on digital health. My name is Bakul Patel. I'm a Senior Policy Advisor to the Center Director at Center for Devices and Radiological Health at the Food and Drug Administration. Before we start with the questions, I would like to tell you a bit more about FDA's perspective in general and also give you some background information about our recently issued final guidance for developers of mobile medical applications. Let's talk about digital health for a second. As you can see from this picture, digital health comprises of many things at home, wireless technologies, monitoring systems at home for patients who are discharged, and then, of course, empowering patients. Let me share the center's vision. We believe that patients in the U.S. should have access to high-quality, safe, and effective medical devices and should be first in the world. U.S. should be a leader in medical device innovation, in manufacturing, and products that's used in medical technologies. We should also make sure that devices that are legally sold in the U.S. remain safe, effective, and with high quality. We would like, as a center and at FDA, how people have access to understandable science-based information about medical device and their use. Let's talk about medical device definition. What is a medical device? Section 201H of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act defines a medical device as any product with medical purpose that does not achieve its principal intended purposes by chemical action or being metabolized. In other words, medical devices are those products that are not drugs, just put it simply. So there is a lot of medical devices that are out there in the world that range from a simple tongue depressor to a thermometer to a robotic surgery device to pacemakers and implanters and diagnostic devices that as you all know today. These medical devices, because of the heterogeneity of the types, the size, the shape, the risk that it poses to patients, were defined by Congress in 1976 into three large buckets of risk. Class 1, the lowest risk, Class 3, the highest risk, and the moderate risk type of devices are Class 2. Class 1s and Class 2 and Class 3 are all subject to general controls, which has simple things like complaint handling, following good manufacturing practices, and then Class 3 require a little bit more scrutiny where the manufacturing practice of the device itself would be overseen. Class 2, where majority of devices today fall, have special controls, which means they're tailored controls for a type of device. For a machine that does certain functionality, the FDA writes guidances to conform to those special controls that's required for that particular guidance. Here's how our policies are developed, and here's how we are thinking today. We are fundamentally risk-based, as you saw, the Class 1, Class 2, Class 3. We are functionality-focused oversight, which means that we are platform agnostic. It doesn't really matter if an EKG machine is as big as a room, or EKG machine is big as a bread box, or it's on a smartphone. At the end of the day, the functionality-based oversight is there to protect patients. Let's talk about smart regulations. We need to combine the oversight with smart regulations that's focused and promotes innovation and promotes patient engagement. We are all excited today about how patients are engaging themselves. At the same time, we are excited about technologies that are used in promoting innovation in engaging patients at the same time. But we want to make sure that risk-based is not lost in this process. We also want to make sure that patients are protected, and also it doesn't really matter what shape and form the technology takes into account. Let's look at this EKG example I mentioned earlier. In 1900s, you see on the top left-hand corner of the screen, an EKG machine was as big as a room. And look at how it's evolved over time. It's evolved over time by, as big as a, table machine, as you see at the bottom left-hand corner, to today you see on an iPhone with multiple leads attached to a smartphone device or even a wristband. So at the end of the day, an EKG machine is an EKG machine. Again, used for medical purposes is what we look at. Let's go into the mobile apps world. In the mobile apps world, there are many innovative features that are happening. Inventors, entrepreneurs are taking mobile apps to the next level where patients can be engaged and creating technologies that are very exciting. In 2010, Research to Guidance released a market survey which says by 2015, there would be 500 million smartphone users that will be using health apps. Recently, Research to Guidance also released a report which says by end of 2017, the mobile health market will reach 26 billion. That's incredible. Let's talk about heterogeneity that happens in the mobile apps world. Here's how FDA is looking at approaching the mobile app world, and this is how we looked at when we issued the final guidance. We wanted to focus our oversight on higher patient risk technology and software, not everything. We want to use regulatory tools that are appropriate for technologies, and thinking away from the traditional big buckets of Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, relying more on quality systems. I'm sharing you some examples. With the mobile medical apps, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but then you look at what we did a couple years ago, taking the very simple functionality that either touches a medical device or is used for transmitting, storing, or displaying medical device data. We classified down from a Class 3 classification to a Class 1, which means it requires no pre-market submission. You could simply register those devices if it's meant for medical purposes and be on the marketplace. Let's take a little bit deeper dive into what the mobile apps landscape looks like. I've been tracking for the last couple of years, and every once in a while I'll go to this particular website and look for how many apps in the Apple App Store are for healthcare and fitness and for tagged for medical purposes. They may not necessarily mean the same medical purposes as FDA looks at, but here's a number. About 2 years ago, this number was about 16,000, 17,000, and today it's 43,000. Most of these apps today are focused towards helping people exercise better, live life better. In fact, one of the reports shows 96% are more geared towards calorie counting, cardiovascular fitness, and strength training, where only 4% of these apps are more specialized for remote patient monitoring, etc. And we'll get into that. This is that 4%, and even a subset of that 4% is exactly what we are looking to oversee. But that does not mean all of those 4% will be. Let's get into the details of what is FDA trying to convey in this final guidance. We are actually providing 3 levels of clarity. There is a lot of confusion. We got a lot of questions from folks asking us, when is a mobile app considered a medical device? When is it not considered a medical device? Here's what we said in the guidance. We proposed a draft which said there are many apps which are not medical device, period, which means FDA has no oversight over those. Then there are apps that may necessarily be called health apps, but may meet the definition of a device if you ask somebody, if you ask a consultant or a lawyer. Legally, even when they meet those definitions of a medical device, we would say they're so low risk that they're falling below the traditional Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 regulations. So we wanted to identify those. So we created the second bucket, that's the gray bucket in the middle. And then you look at the top of the triangle here, it's really only those apps that now turn into a cleared, approved, or otherwise regulated medical device in other forms, that functionality exists in other forms. We would regulate mobile apps in the same format or the same approach. Let's dive even deeper into the guidance itself. We took the world, we said, we won't regulate everything. We want to oversee only a small subset of mobile apps that exist today, and even smaller than those that meet the definition of a medical device under the Section 201H of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. The 2-part definition calls out for if a mobile app that's an accessory to a regulated medical device. Let me give you a quick example on that one. What I mean by that is an app that now controls a blood pressure cuff falls in that category. An app that controls an MRI machine to remotely control the dosage or the MRI machine itself is considered to be meeting that part of the definition. Now let's look at the really easy part of the definition is if a mobile app now transforms a mobile platform into a regulated medical device. What we mean by that is an EKG that's used to be in the size of a room or a tabletop device is now doing the same functionality by a mobile platform or a smartphone. You would say that's a medical device. We would want users to have the same sort of confidence. We want users to have the same assurance of safety and effectiveness when they're using EKGs for medical purposes. Let's take a really simple example that's near and dear to my heart is diabetic monitoring. Blood glucose meters exist today. You can buy at CVS or some other drugstores. Those are really small devices. People have come up with some ingenious ideas of how to attach a small attachment to your bottom of your smartphone and use the computing power in a smartphone and use it for calculating or measuring your blood glucose. That's what we are talking about in the second part of the definition. We went further. We said we want to provide clarity for people who meet the middle part of the triangle, which is in where the apps don't really need oversight, or we think those are beneficial enough that our oversight would actually not be well worth. They are even lower than the Class 1 regulations that we have. Here are some quick examples. Tools that clinicians and practitioners use: APGAR score calculator, NIH stroke scale calculators, calculating drip rates for nurses as they are having IV for patients, apps that coach patients in reducing obesity, diabetes, hypertension, or other diseases. We said those are all, they could be medical devices, but we are saying those would be under enforcement discretion. By that we mean that the FDA will not enforce the law on manufacturers of those apps. So this is the most important category that I thought people were very interested in knowing. For the first time from what I remember, have not clearly articulated what is not a medical device. This is actually a very important list for people to understand. Just because a product is now used in a clinical setting or a healthcare setting does not make it a medical device. It goes back to our policy principles. It needs to be the functionality. Also, the intention of the manufacturer should be for medical purposes. Let's talk about some of the examples on this list. Games that stimulate various cardiac arrest scenarios to train health professionals is not a medical device. It's used in a healthcare setting. Apps or programs or software applications that take a picture of a pill and then differentiate whether it's actually what kind of pill it is. It's matching things on a library. That's not a medical device. Help guide patients to ask appropriate questions to their physicians. It's not a medical device. It's something that people could do today. Scheduling hospital rooms or bed spaces, that's not a medical device. So that's really what we are getting at. But I would encourage you to look at this list. It's very insightful if you take a look at where the line's drawn for what's a medical device versus not. So let me summarize this. We have a whole bunch of apps that's coming to us from a healthcare perspective. What we have done in the guidance is identify those apps that are not considered medical devices, hence no regulatory requirements. We identified apps that we feel are lower risk, and provides a lot of benefits, may meet the definition of a medical device legally and technically, but we think that they would be beneficial to exercise enforcement discretion on those. And then the very top of the triangle is where we want to focus our oversight is the two-part definition I walked through today. And you can see from some of the pictures an ultrasound wand that attaches to your smartphone is a medical device. And radiology diagnostic viewer is a medical device that's used to exist in a doctor's office and a radiologist's office under some conditions. So EKG machines, we have cleared some of these apps today. And that's really where we are trying to focus on. Back to how is the agency addressing this evolving landscape? We got this question a lot. We were asked the question, how is the agency keeping up with the fast-moving technologies, and how are we going to take into account and keep people informed on this? We have created multiple things. The first thing is we have created a mobile medical app web page on fda.gov. Please go and take a look at this link. It's actually informative from the point that we will be keeping this list current. As we hear more questions about mobile apps people are making, and you can see the email address about mobile medical apps at fda.hhs.gov. That's the email address where we have set up as a central point for folks, innovators, and users to ask questions to FDA. As we learn more and we see more examples, we will put examples on this website. We are also internally coordinating with folks in the center, with different offices, to make sure that the policy decisions when made to mobile medical apps are consistent and in line with the policy we published in this guidance. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and we'll go for questions.